Welcome to Frasier on Film, the Frasier TV show podcast with a twist. Each episode of the podcast visits each episode of Frasier across its 11-series run. But our main focus isn't on the good doctor himself, no. It's going to be one of the guest appearances on the show that week. That could be one of the many A-listers who called into Frasier's KACL radio show, or just someone who made a fleeting appearance at Cafe Nervosa. We'll delve into that actor's backstory, look over their cinematic offerings, and deep dive into one movie specifically. By the end, we'll see if we can make a connection between their character in Frasier and their character in the film we've just talked about. So you'll be hearing about icons and wash-ups, legends and starlets, sherry drinkers and beer guzzlers, blockbusters and B-movies. It's going to be an education in it all. But what if you don't really watch Frasier? That's fine, you'll probably know the actors we're talking about. And if you don't really know the actors we're talking about, then that's fine too. You'll know the movies. So whether you're a fan of Frasier or you're a fan of film, this is the podcast for you. So, pull up your favourite bar stool at McGinty's and tell the wine club you'll be running late. Because this is Frasier on Film, and I'm your host, Ben Murray. And you're listening. What if Frasier took a call from the Monster Squad? How are you doing, everyone? Very well, I hope. Spring is very much with us, and we'll soon be bathing in those warmer days. At least, I hope we will here in jolly old England. I'm back to impart a whole bunch of Frasier universe-related wisdom and nonsense onto you. Yes, it's Season 1, Episode 14 of Frasier on Film and of Frasier itself, and that can mean only one thing, and that thing is that this is the episode entitled Can't Buy Me Love, the episode where Frasier sold off to the highest bidder at a celebrity bachelor's auction. Our guest for this episode, who we'll be focusing on, is Ashley Banks. An on-screen appearance, Ashley plays Renata, the daughter of the woman who buys Frasier. Many of you, though, may know her best for her work in the 1987 cult hit, The Monster Squad. And that's what we're going to be covering today. And I should admit up front that I've never seen it, but I'm aware it has its champions and cheerleaders. And by the end of today's episode, we'll see if I'm going to be one of them. Now, Ashley falls into this particular category of guest appearances that actually excites me most about this podcast, because at the beginning of any recording, as I've said before, when I start these episodes, I know nothing about some of the individuals I'm choosing to focus on. And by the time I've reviewed the recent Frasier episode, my next job as part of the structure of the recording process is to research and create a narrative around the guest. And I have to admit, that might be a bit of a risky move sometimes, but I believe human beings are intrinsically interesting, and I can't wait to see what I'm going to discover today, both about Ashley and her wider, if perhaps limited, on-screen appearances, and of course, the Monster Squad movie. I really don't know much, if anything, about it, but I know it has huge acclaim. So, without further ado, let's send Frasier up on stage to those who are baying for blood and let the bidding war commence.
Look, he just crawled into the doghouse. It's Dr. Frasier Crane. And you know what we always do when we get a house call from the doctor?
Drop your pants and bend over. I take your temperature.
Hello, Bulldog.
So, Doc, who's your pick for the Giants-Saints game this weekend?
The Giants.
You're kidding.
The Saints.
You're kidding.
Well, somebody has to win.
Yeah, they would if the Giants and Saints were playing this weekend.
Episode title, Can't Buy Me Love, air date 20th of January 1994, writers Chuck Ramberg and Ann Flett Giordano, and directed by James Burrows. So we open up with Bulldog, which is very fitting because there are going to be two narratives that run throughout this episode, one focused on Frasier and one focused on Bulldog. Bulldog's in the booth behind the mic, and he is being his most obnoxious, I would say. He's being very dismissive to his callers. He's got Frasier panicked and waiting outside in the hallway. Frasier's left his briefcase in the booth, and he's too timid to go in and collect it because he thinks Bulldog's going to make him the subject of one of his pranks. Back at Frasier's apartment, and Martin's playing chess by himself at the dining table, which is interesting because in a few seasons' time, we'll learn as part of a significant plot point that Martin doesn't have a clue about how to play chess. Niles enters the apartment. He's brought champagne. Why? Because Maris is out of town, so of course he's going to celebrate. The champagne starts pouring, and I did notice, weirdly, at the back of the Frasier set here, the piano is shifted off to the right-hand side. Like, it feels further off to the right than normal. And I can't see any reason for that because the back of Frasier's apartment isn't used for anything other than some of this initial stuff. So it doesn't make any sense to me why the piano had to move. Nevertheless, Martin says to Frasier, we've got a celebrity bachelor auction coming up. And Frasier says, well, say no more, I'll do it. But Martin actually wanted Bulldog. We know Martin loves Bulldog. But then he has to stammer over asking Frasier. And of course, Frasier accepts, and Martin says, but you will ask Bulldog, won't you? Yes, I'll put a note on his hydrant. And Niles cuts in with a little bit of fear of God messaging to Frasier. What if nobody bids? I've got to say, this celebrity auction thing, bachelor auction, that feels like a uniquely American thing to me. I'm not sure that it happens over here. Maybe I don't move in those sorts of circles, but I tend to see it in a fair few American sitcoms and shows. They have these bachelor auctions. Let me know, American listeners, is this a thing? Is this a popular thing out there for you? Anyway, we get to the night of the bachelor auction. Everyone's done up like a dog's dinner. They're all in their best bib and tucker. Bulldog is in an awful waistcoat here. I mean, I know this was the mid-90s, but Jesus, this is like someone threw up on a waistcoat. Frasier says, the most they're going to get from me is a handshake and a meal, whereas Bulldog is offering limo, basketball tickets, many sexual-related puns. He's very crass in this episode. Bulldog is particularly crass in this episode. Roz is the first one to bid. She bids on TJ Hooker, some sportsman. She saw what she wanted and she took it. And before Frasier goes out on stage, Martin says, if the bidding's slow, just drop a quarter and take a while to pick it up. But the bidding isn't slow. $500 is bid on Frasier, and he's delighted when he sees who's bid on him. It's Christina Harper, a tall brunette who's a model, and she bends over in front of him to write the check for $500. She's a model, of course. Frasier's always getting models somehow. This is the nature of sitcoms. Doesn't matter how unattractive or unlucky or ridiculous the leading man is, he will always get some of the most attractive women in the world. Not that I'm saying Frasier's an unattractive man. I'm thinking of Jerry Seinfeld, of course. Anyway, Frasier invites her to dinner at the Elliott Bay Towers, and he's thrilled with himself. Meanwhile, Bulldog returns, and he's a bit disappointed. There was only one bid. It was $100, and it was Daphne accidentally bid on him because Martin said, just get the bidding going. It was the only bid. And Bulldog's crassness continues. He says to Daphne, I got a squirt. When I come back, let's play fetch. Eugh, it's a little bit creepy, Bulldog. Anyway, back to Frasier's apartment. He's making Cherry's Jubilee or crepes flambé or something. The full dinner service is out before Christina comes. And when she does arrive, there's a joke that he rented a restaurant trolley for the evening. He says, don't tell me you don't own one. I mean, the thing is, Frasier, I'm pretty sure you do own one. You're making it out like a gag, but I'm pretty sure that is yours. That's not rented. But Christina has bad news. She's been called to a job, and she asked Frasier to babysit her daughter, Renata. Her daughter, Renata, who is 12 years old. Anyway, this is Ashley Banks, done up in a football jacket, full of attitude, check gingham shirt. I always represent a gingham shirt. I like that. And Frasier sees babysitting her that evening as a way to score major brownie points.
What's your damage?
Well, I'll tell you what my damage is, young lady. I've been talking on the phone for an hour and a half. You haven't said a word to me except to ask for more Cheetos. They're coming, Eddie!
Ashley Banks is great here with the way that she conducts her character. All the no way on the phone, he'll call you back. She's absolutely cutting to Frasier at first. But then conversations shift because she talks about the fact that her mum is always using her as a pawn and sort of neglecting her, keeping her in this limbo land where she's always 9 years old, so she doesn't have to face the fact that she's growing older. And over the course of the evening, and over cookie dough and Cheetos, Frasier comes to understand that Renata isn't a bad kid. She's actually someone who's been quite neglected by her mum. Now, we get to a point. Well, hang on. I'll come to this in a second. On our other storyline, we cut to Daphne in the limo with Bulldog. And I've got mixed feelings about this one because Daphne Jane Leaves is very funny, playing drunk. But what's not so funny is Bulldog, Dan Butler's creepy performance, because he's absolutely fascinated by the fact that she's getting drunker and drunker and a little bit looser as he sees it. And he keeps topping her drink up. I don't know. This is a bit of a red flag, brother. I'm not sure about this one. Anyway, we see his true nature in this scene. He's short and his bark is big, but he's not really a brave guy, because when Daphne gets into a ruckus out the window with one of the other drivers, Bulldog's yanked out of the limo. Very funny. Let's get back to the apartment, to the interesting storyline. Frasier finally takes Christina to task when she returns to the apartment and says, how could you keep your daughter in this limbo state? How could you leave her out on the sidewalk while you went in to get a tattoo? How could you neglect her so much? He basically puts his morals and ethics first before his attraction. He said, when I first saw you, I thought you were very attractive, but now I know a little bit about you. Well, suddenly you don't look so good, sister. But the truth is, Christina actually does dote on Renata and does everything for her. She sacrifices so much for her. And we see that Frasier's actually been duped, and Christina walks out on Frasier because she can't believe the way that he's spoken to her. Now, there's a couple of things here. Number one, Christina dumped her 12-year-old daughter at the house of a strange man she didn't even know. Bad parenting. Number two, Christina says, this is the first night I've had out in a year. Well, that's simply not true. You were out the evening of the Celebrity Bachelor's auction. So that's 2 nights out. So you've lied about that. Number three, Christina, why are you getting so mad at Frasier? Frasier is showing you what a good guy he is by showing how outraged he would be that you would treat your daughter so shabbily. He has no reason to disbelieve your daughter. Now that you've told him that's not true, surely you can make it work instead of running off in a huff. He's showing you he's a good human being. So I tell you what, Frasier, you dodged a bullet here. Those were 3 major red flags from Christina. The episode ends with Frasier sharing cookie dough with Eddie. Eddie's made out quite well between these last few episodes. He shared Niles' eggnog in the Christmas episode a few episodes ago. And it ends with Frasier contemplating, will Freddie turn into a bit of a monster in the later years? And Martin returns home and reminds him that you think they'll never grow out of the know-it-all stage. And he's still hoping that Frasier will. And Frasier answers the phone at the end to Daphne in a very humorous way, no way. And we get a post-credit scene of Frasier, Daphne and Martin sharing champagne in the back of the limo with Eddie. So what we've had here is a fairly bog-standard episode. There's nothing particularly poignant about it, but the beats are strong and Ashley Banks is great as Renata and there are some laughs to be had. What's missing is the heart. You know I love the heart of the Frasier episodes, but that's fine. Sometimes the gags and the humour is enough. Just a few bits of trivia here. The title, Can't Buy Me Love, is obviously from the Beatles song of the same name from 1964. This is a revisitation of the Celebrity Bachelor auction theme that was originally employed in the Cheers episode Bidding on the Boys, and several behind-the-scenes people were involved in creating both episodes, particularly James Burrows and David Angel. I've got to say, Cheers Bidding on the Boys, I've seen it. It's completely forgettable, as many Cheers episodes are. I know that Cheers is great backstory for Frasier, but Cheers just all blurs into one. There's nothing distinct about any of the episodes for the most part, for me. I'm sorry, Cheers fans, I'm sorry. And as previously discussed, we see Martin playing chess, but we know that he can't play chess, so Just what the hell was he doing with that board? Anyway, we've had probably the most amount of screen time with a guest on Frasier on Film so far with Ashley Banks, which is great. There's lots to look at and analyse and think about, particularly when we come to the end of today's episode and we make our Crane connection between Ashley Banks' performance in this and her performance in The Monster Squad. But before we get to Monster Squad, I'm really interested to find out what we can uncover about Ashley Banks herself. What was her pathway leading up to Frasier at such a young age, and what has her career in life been like since? What's she been doing? What's she got going on? There's only one way to find out.
No way. No way. Hold on, there's another call. Hello? He'll call you back. No way.
Now, who was that?
I don't know. No way. Oh, God, another call's coming in.
Do you mind? I'll answer this one. Thank you. Hello. It's for you.
Well then, I suspected Ashley Bank was going to be something of a tricky one for Frasier on Film because, okay, not everyone can be Ben Stiller, not everyone can be Elijah Wood, Sarah Connor, Linda Hamilton, not Sarah Connor, that's the character she plays. Ashley Bank, she was tricky. I really had to get my investigative hat on, and I guess this is how reporters feel when they're trying to dig up as much as they can on someone for a piece. Now, full disclosure, from the off, I reached out to Ashley through a couple of her social channels just to see if she might be interested in sharing a bit of information, if not coming on the show, sharing a bit of information. I didn't hear back. I don't even know if she got the messages, so I must proceed without her. And I have to be honest, I've used a combination of my undercover investigative stuff through browsing through her social media, mainly Instagram, and some of the online resources that have chronicled interviews with her, etc., to piece together her career and what it has looked like. Because, as you might expect, it's not been particularly starry and glitzy, but nonetheless interesting all the same. So, here we go. This is what I've managed to piece together. So, Ashley Bank was born in LA, in California, obviously. Unlike the New Yorkers, she's born in LA. And she is credited as both an actress and a producer, best known, this is what IMDb says, for The Monster Squad, which we're covering today, Frasier, which we already covered today, and something called The Haunted. So 2 out of 3 ain't bad in terms of what we're covering for her. Let's just go to her IMDb for a second, just so we can get a big picture of Ashley Banks' career. So her first ever appearance was in a TV series in 1984, Cagney and Lacey. She's done various TV offerings, a show called Call to Glory, Family Ties, Brothers, Right to Die, Dolly, My Two Dads, Superior Court, Highway to Heaven. I don't really know any of these. The only thing that I really recognise outside of the stuff that's already been mentioned is an appearance on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as Sasha in 1990. So very much a child star, because that was several years before she appeared on Frasier. And subsequently, VeggieTales Classics TV series, Paranormal Burbank TV series, Black Box TV, Monster Piece Theatre Volume 1, The Sheepdog Show, and all jumbled up. So it's not being rude. She clearly hasn't had much of a acting career subsequent to Frasier, with her most well-known piece being Monster Squad. Obviously, I can't talk about Monster Squad because I haven't seen the film yet, and it came out in 1987, which is very early in her career. She was a child, so everything that I've found out about her has been subsequent to that. There is a quote from her, which is, "After Monster Squad, I went on to do a lot of sitcoms and TV movies and a great number of commercials. And then, when I was 13 or 14, I decided that I just wanted to be normal, to grow up outside of the scrutiny of Hollywood." Well, there you go. That's why there isn't so much work to draw on. So post-Frasier, she attended New York University between 1999 and 2003, where she studied politics, journalism, and film. She graduated with honours. And during this time, she spent a year in an overseas study program called Semester at Sea, which took place in 2002. And from what I've been able to find out, Semester at Sea is a study abroad program, which is managed by the Institute for Shipboard Education. And the whole thing takes place aboard a cruise ship. In 2001, she interned at Arenaplex, which was a new company at the time set up to provide non-feature film programming for digital cinemas. And then between 2003 and 2006, she became a broadcast associate at CBS News, providing a wide range of production and post-production support for documentary and reality specials on various cable networks. And some of the credits that I've been able to find include stuff for the Food Network through to shows like Osama bin Laden's Hideouts. So you can see here, she's still very much working in the entertainment industry, but very much behind the scenes. So going to college at Manhattan's New York University and working in news production for several years, Bank was pulled back into the process of filmmaking when a friend brought her on board to produce a collegiate thesis film. And she said she thought at that point, maybe I want to produce narrative film instead of news documentaries. And then I'd be on set while the others were acting and I'd get to miss the process. And I'd think that maybe I wanted to do that again as well. And then I realized I'm done being normal. Being normal is boring. I want my fabulous actor life back.
I looked up from my fluorescently lit windowless cubicle and went, what the fuck was I thinking? Normal sucks. This is normal? This is no way to live. I'm in jail. What am I doing? So it's actually been like starting over because a lot of the casting directors that I knew are not working anymore, or I'm different, and they haven't seen me lately. And sometimes, oddly enough, I'm too expensive to do the smaller parts because of what I've done.
Right.
So a lot of the smaller roles, they don't even want to see me because they're like, her rate's too high, which is hard sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's like starting over with a lot of experience in your back pocket.
And then let's jump to her LinkedIn. She's listed in her LinkedIn education that from 2007 to 2013, she attended Carter Thor, which is an acting studio that works to help actors, writers, directors, producers, and artists of many disciplines to mine, define, and refine their craft. It sounds like a lot of spiel to me, but it works. Their motto is, the age of information is over. Now it is about communication. And during this time, she interned for 4 months at an event coordination company. This is wild. I mean, this feels very normal, this career. It feels like something I tried to do when I was trying to get into film and television, working and interning at different organizations behind the scenes, knowing that none of it was really what I wanted to do. Interesting. She's been married to television producer David O'Leary since 2012, and she actually became an instructor at the New York Film Academy in October of 2013. And that is a position she apparently still holds to this day. And it's important to say that concurrent to all of this, she has herself listed as an actress and filmmaker since September 1984, right up until today. As she puts it, various roles in film, television, live theatre, and 43 national commercials. Interestingly, she also lists herself as a comedian and a casting director. Digging a little further into her personal life, but without wanting to come across as stalkerish, some information I can reveal is that she has a 5-year-old. She is very much a voter. She got out and voted for the Democrats at the recent elections, but there is a lot of information about her getting out and encouraging others to get out and vote. She also regularly attends Collectomania and Comic-Con-like conventions and events to meet fans of Monster Squad. She has a presence on Cameo, and she was on the picket line when all the actors went on strike and when the writers went on strike in the last few years. She's also a SAG, AFRA member, and very much so for her, the focus is on family. So I guess it's unsurprising that there's not a lot more for us to pick up on about Ashley Bank. I'm going to assume she's a very private person, and that's absolutely fine by me. I'm not going to dig beyond what we've discovered, but I hope to uncover and learn a little bit more about her and Monster Squad by actually watching Monster Squad. So there we go. It's not all going to be bells and whistles, folks. But it's information, and it's good to know that even people who appear on the lofty heights of Frasier can be workhorse folk just like you and me. Let's go to Monster Squad, shall we?
You know who to call when you have ghosts. But who do you call when you have monsters?
We're the Monster Squad. What's a squad? It's like Miami Vice, I think.
They're young and inexperienced.
Naughty virgin.
They're a bit disorganized.
Monsters are not real.
We don't know that, sir.
2,000-year-old dead guys do not get up and walk away by themselves.
But when strange things start happening in town...
There's a monster in my closet.
Ooh, look at that big, scary monster.
What's happening? You wait until the werewolf.
Silver bullet?
They're the only ones ready to do battle.
Something's out there and it's killing people. And if it's monsters, nobody's gonna do a thing about it but us.
The Monster Squad, released 1987, directed by Fred Decker, starring a whole host of child actors, but most notably today, Ashley Bank, of course, playing Phoebe, and Tom Noonan. Lots of other actors and whatnot, but I don't really know them, and there's such a broad child cast, I don't want to miss anyone out. Context for those who need it. Monster Squad, I believe, was a big film, big cult film in the US. I think US kids probably lapped it up. Kids of the late 80s, kids of the 90s. Didn't really travel over here to the UK, I don't think. Which is strange because it does play like a direct-to-video kind of film, but it did have a theatrical release. It bombed upon its theatrical release, but sort of picked up fame as the years went by, I guess, and has this real culty following. Like I said, Ashley Banks is regularly at Comic-Cons and Collectormanias where she's basically dining out on her performance from this. I don't mean that in a dismissive way. It's just that is the thing that fans want to connect with her over. They want to see her because of her involvement in this film. So I have really very little knowledge of it. For context, what is it? It's a kind of cool concept. It's all of the classic Universal monsters. So Dracula, Frankenstein, the creature from the Black Lagoon, the Mummy, and one other, werewolf, wereman, or whatever you want to call it. Those characters in one universe together are brought to 1980s suburban America for one night only to destroy an amulet which has the power of stopping them or gifting them control of the whole world. And who's going to stop them? A bunch of Goonie-esque kids calling themselves the Monster Squad, basically prepubescent Ghostbusters who make it their mission to tackle these universal monsters. They love them, they're obsessed with them, but they need to stop them from taking over the world. That's the concept. And I've got to say, 3 striking things right off the bat. When I started watching this film, 3 things caught my eye. Number 1, Tom Noonan as Frankenstein pops up as a credit. Tom Noonan. I'm like, wow, Dollaride from Red Dragon, from Manhunter rather. Scary, intense. Him as a Frankenstein could work very well. Second of all, Stan Winston's special effects. Stan Winston, excellent. Great. Okay, we're in for a real treat with some of the visual delights we're going to get in this, clearly. And then Shane Black as writer. Shane Black, which was like, wow, I totally didn't know that he was involved in this at all. Now, those 3 things got me excited for the film. And the film is essentially the original, the precursor for Stranger Things. It's you know, what Stranger Things models itself on, along with a million other things like Goonies and whatnot. Trouble is, it's quite uncool. It's not as good as any of its peers, the Monster Squad. And sorry for fans of the film. I'm coming at it as a 39-year-old man from the UK who didn't grow up with it. So obviously, if you grew up with it and it's close to your heart, I totally get it. And I can see why you would enjoy it. However, I've got to say, in a modern world, if you're a kid now, you're getting much more for your money with Stranger Things. If you were a kid then, you're getting much more for your money with the Goonies, which was, you know, pretty much exactly the same time. Much more adventure, much more character and identity to the cast of characters, much more humour, and much more fun. And if you were a bit older, and if you were a teenager, mid-teens, then you've got the Lost Boys, which came out 2 weeks after this film. So it kind of swallowed up all of its box office success. So the Monster Squad, unfortunately, was kind of cursed because it didn't appeal to the early teens. It didn't appeal to the mid to late teens. It could only have appealed to, I don't know, the demographic of 5 to 10 years old. And that sounds harsh, but I don't mean it to be that way. I imagine people took kindly to it as time went on, and Goonies and The Lost Boys had their moment in the sun, and people revisited things that had been overlooked. And that's where Monster Squad got a second life. But for me, it was never more than kind of cute. I appreciated the fact that these kids were obsessed with monsters. It reminded me of my time at primary school, which for US listeners is up to the age of 11, when I used to hang out with all my friends and we'd all pretend we were Ghostbusters and that we'd seen Mr. Stay Puft the night before and that we had huge dinosaurs roaming around, and we would all trick and make each other believe that we were actually seeing these things, and we all knew that we weren't, but the fun was in believing that we were seeing that and we were sharing this experience. And that's kind of the energy that Monster Squad gives off in many ways. All these kids, they don't bat an eyelid, they don't doubt each other. Monsters exist and they are there to stop them. And they're obsessed with them. They like slasher movies. One of the kids wants to go and see Groundhog Day Part 12, which this is pre-Bill Murray's Groundhog Day, obviously, is a slasher film about a guy with a machete. And he watches it with his dad on his rooftop overlooking the drive-in screen. And it's kind of all cute. And I like that, and I like the charm of these old monsters from classic Hollywood horror films coming and merging with them in present day or 80s America. And the kids, they're pretty cheeky. They're swearing a hell of a lot, which is what's interesting because it feels ruder at times than Goonies is, but at the same time it still feels more childlike, which is why there is this muddled demographic that they're appealing to, because it's definitely not going to appeal to adult super. It's definitely not going to appeal to adults overly, and it's kind of in the middle of appealing to teens and the prepubescent kids. I think that the rating of the film, so PG-13, which is what it got, which is, I guess, for UK listeners, I guess that's a 15, maybe a 12, 15. I think that would have prevented it from reaching the wider audience who are most likely to identify with its characters. But it's still a good jaunt. Now, the monsters that are in it, the interesting thing is they're clearly all not quite right. And by that, I mean, they don't ever really name them. They name Frankenstein, I think, but they don't actually have the rights to any of the characters. So none of them can really look completely like their namesake. So everyone is slightly off, and they don't refer to them by name very often. And this is where I was a little bit disappointed overall, because of the 5 monsters, the only one that actually looks scary is the mummy. And the mummy does look creepy and scary because it's quite a gaunt figure wrapped up in bandages with a twisted mouth up the side of its face. Very scary stuff. Dracula, the performance of Dracula is cool, but Dracula is he's always just like a very suave man, so not very scary. Tom Noonan as Frankenstein is kind of cool, but his Frankenstein, I guess in keeping with the old Frankenstein, is a sweetheart, really. As soon as he's shown any sort of kindness and compassion, he becomes a real nice person. Werewolf is just, Michael J. Fox's Teen Wolf, so there's nothing particularly interesting there. The best makeup effects, but not the scariest, are probably reserved for the amphibian thing, the fish from the Black Lagoon, whatever they want to call it in this. That's quite effective, I suppose. But all in all, it's not the best stuff Stan Winston's done. And I think it's more a case of the people who work at Stan Winston's production company trying their best and trying out things. But for me, it didn't quite sing as much as some of his scary stuff really did later in life. For kids, maybe it works, but I'm not so sure.
Kick him in the nose! Kick him in the nose! He doesn't have nose! Do it! Wolfman's got nards! Come on!
There is a lot of campy horror stuff in this all the way through. We get snakes curling in trees. We get dark, dungeonous areas. We get books, Van Helsing's diary that needs to be recited in German in order to break the spell of these monsters coming through to modern day and send them back out. We get coffins flying out of planes and landing in lakes. We get bats. We get all that sort of stuff. And it's cool. It knows what it's doing. I just said it's cool. And I've got to be honest, it's not. I'm sorry. I wish it was cooler than it was. I want to buy into the Monster Squad. I would love for these kids to be cool. They're just not. The problem is they got no chemistry with each other. And at a time when you have the Goonies in cinemas, how the hell are you going to release a film like Monster Squad and not make sure you're getting chemistry between the kids? And that's on the director, I'm sorry to say. There's more chemistry in Frankenstein's lab than there is going on this film. What a silly rubbish gag that was. Deary me. Deary me. Is there much for the adults in this? I wouldn't say so. The humour largely falls flat. The kids are meant to be the humour, and their smart mouthing just gets really annoying after a while. They say things like, Wolfman's got nards. Nards. God. What else do they say? They say things like, other crap. They say other crap. Whatever it is. And I guess if we are to pick something that's kind of unique about this story, I believe it is the framing device, which is that our central two kids, which is a character called Sean, I think, and his sister, Phoebe, played by Ashley Banks. Their parents are on the verge of a divorce, on the verge of splitting. And I think the monsters that these kids are actually fighting in this movie are emblematic. They're emblems of the desire to stop and fight back against the dissolution of their parents' marriage. But that's probably giving it a hell of a lot of credit. Let's go and talk directly about Ashley Bank, shall we? Because she is the crux of this film in many ways. She's the youngest cast member, so she is absolutely teeny tiny in this. She's maybe 4 years old or 5 years old. The rest of the kids in the Monster Squad are like 10 or 11 minimum, going up to maybe 13 or 14. And they're all boys, and they're all part of this treehouse club, which says no girls. And of course, Ashley Bank, Phoebe, is knocking on the door. She wants to be part of it. And the boys are like, no, you can't be a part of it. She's considered an annoyance to the boys. And it's the reason that her older brother can't go to the cinema and watch the latest Groundhog Day slasher film, because he's got to stay home and look after her. So we get that embedded little bit of resentment there. But we also see that Phoebe, Ashley Bank as Phoebe, is very fiery. She's very feisty. She is also the one who clocks most of the things that will pay off in order for our gang, our squad, to get success. She's the one who clocks the German guy looking through the windows of the house, this German guy who will later help her read Van Helsing's diary. She's the one who connects with Frankenstein and shows him kindness. And it's quite a cool reference. When Frankenstein and Ashley Banks' Phoebe meet, it is a pastiche and a homage to the original Frankenstein, where Boris Karloff's Frankenstein met a little girl down by the river and then threw her in the water, and then it quickly cuts away and we're told that he murdered her. Here instead, Ashley Bank as Phoebe reaches out to Frankenstein, befriends him, and brings Frankenstein into the Monster Squad, essentially, to help them and work with them. And she's also very cheeky for a 4 or 5 year old, because as all the boys run away from Frankenstein, she says, come on, don't be a chicken shit. This is fantastic. I love it. You couldn't get kids doing this in movies nowadays. Maybe you could, but there would be so much frowning going on and whatnot. Although I have to say, there are a lot of F-bombs dropped in this film, and I don't mean fuck. I mean the word that we don't typically hear in the 21st century movies now, unless you really want to make a character out to be an arsehole. In this movie, all the kids are saying it all over the place. And Ashley Bank is great. She's very fiery, as I say, and there is a hint of precociousness. They can't help themselves, the filmmakers. They have to do this really corny thing where Ashley Bank finally is with the Monster Squad, and she's looking through some binoculars, and she realizes that Dracula's brides are approaching. And we get this shot where she slowly lowers the binoculars and she goes, "You guys, please. This is highly annoying. I can't articulate why. You just have to trust me. You either understand why that's annoying or you don't."
You guys!
Oh, shit! Bastard, come on!
And then the beautiful thing is, and I guess I should say spoiler alert if you don't want to know the end of Monster Squad, but the beautiful thing is, she saves the day. She's the one who recants Van Helsing's diary in German, sending them all back through the portal to the past. And she gets this very beautiful moment where she is sad to see Frankenstein getting whipped away. She says, "Don't go, don't leave me." And I really do see this as a sort of parallel for her father in the context of the story. Her mum and dad breaking up. She doesn't want her dad to go, and this is her saying goodbye to her dad. And I liked her. I liked her. What I didn't like was this very uncomfortable framing device right before she recants, which is this. The German guy who is helping the Monster Squad tells them the only way we can send these monsters back is if we get a virgin to recite these chapters. And they spend a while looking at this 14 or 15-year-old girl, I don't know how old she's supposed to be, one of their sisters, making sure, "Are you definitely a virgin? Are you definitely a virgin?" And she's like, "Yes." And they try and use her to recant it. And then it turns out, well, maybe she's not so virginal afterwards, after all. And then one of the boys in the Monster Squad looks at Phoebe, this tiny girl, and says, "What about her? She's a virgin." It's like, oh, I don't like you referring to... You shouldn't even be talking about being a virgin when you're talking about a girl of that age. A plot device, I suppose, that gets us to that ending point. But, the text should be more clear. They should say something like, only a virgin of age can recant this spell, rather than, anyone who's born. Give a baby it to speak German. I guess they couldn't. So she has quite an effect. I would say she's not in the film as much as I would have liked, but clearly she's a massive fan favourite because she's at all these conventions, and that means she delighted in the role and she loved playing it. I guess it was a lot of fame for her very, very early on, perhaps, and as we saw, she didn't really do much afterwards, and she went down other avenues, which is absolutely fine by me. It's a fine film to watch once. I don't really get the appeal of it, even as a cult favourite. I do think it has a straight-to-video feel for me. I don't think that it stands the test of time, and there are better versions of this in almost every way, but credit to them for doing something kind of cool, even though, unfortunately, Monster Squad, you're not cool. What is interesting, something that I did find out that was interesting, is that Ashley Bank was going to be cast in Fatal Attraction, but the trivia says she turned it down. I'm sure at 4 years old she didn't say, "No, this Fatal Attraction script is nowhere near as good as Monster Squad." It would have been her parents, and I'm not surprised, because in Fatal Attraction, that Michael Douglas Glenn Close film, the little girl is the daughter of Michael Douglas, who's basically at the mercy of the psychopathic rage of Glenn Close. So they probably went for the more secure realm of monsters rather than the salacious realm of affairs. And there is a scene in this film which is quite cool, where Dracula picks up Ashley Banks' Phoebe and actually says to her something like, "Give me the amulet, you bitch." And I was like, oh my goodness, you cannot talk to a child like that. But what's cool in this scene is that Ashley Bank had been told by the director, "I'm not going to tell you when to scream, you're going to know when to scream." And her scream in this scene is completely genuine, because she had no idea that Dracula was going to look the way he looked, which is red contact lenses, fangs, very intimidating. So that scream you hear is a genuine scream of fright.
I just really feel the need to make a connection.
Well, Niles, I think you've made a connection. It just seems a little bit extreme, though,
So all of this brings us to the point in the show where we have to make our Crane connection and try to link everything we've just talked about back to Frasier. And specifically today, we will try to link Ashley Banks' smart-mouthing Renata to Ashley Banks' teeny-tiny, innocent Phoebe in Monster Squad. And right off the bat, I guess we can say that both characters in their own way end up, shaping the destiny of the outcomes of both the show and the film. So in Frasier, Renata's twisted words about her model mother end up sending Frasier down this one-way alley which he can't back up out of. And by contrast, or similarly I should say, Phoebe's persistence to getting in with the Monster Squad and her fearlessness with Frankenstein and her ability to read German at the end all save the day and ensure that monsters don't take over the land. So in many ways, I choose to believe that Renata is the grown-up Phoebe. Phoebe is Renata. And while Renata's spilling secrets about her mother to Frasier over shared cookie dough, she's actually keeping the biggest secret of all, that she's a vampire slayer, a Monster Squad hero or heroine, the real star of the show, Ashley Bank. There we go. Let us once again then say goodbye to Frasier. Goodbye to another failed conquest. Oh, poor Frasier. Goodbye to the very grungy Renata and her deliciously manipulative words. Goodbye to Ashley Bank, whose pursuits both on and off the screen are admirable, and I wish her well in whatever project she's working on or off screen. And goodbye to Phoebe. Even though, like Frankenstein, you may not want me to go, I must. The episode must close, but thank you for saving the day. And finally, as always, thank you to all of you, dear listeners. Thanks for liking, for listening, for engaging. I really appreciate it. I've met some cool people having launched this, and I appreciate you listening. Don't forget to subscribe to Frasier on Film if you want to keep up with future episodes. And you can follow me on most of the socials. Just look for Frasier on Film. I'm mainly active on Instagram and on Threads and Blue Sky. And you can also get in touch with me using FrasierOnFilm@gmail.com. If you would like to leave me a review, please do. If you would not like to leave me a review, kindly move on. Next week's episode, Frasier puts his money where his mouth is as he bets Martin that he can guess which of his poker buddies used to be a criminal in You Can't Tell a Crook by His Cover. Our focus for that episode will be guest actor Robert Miano, who for fans of Frasier will remember him as the pool player who wants to beat the crap out of him. As always, we'll be delving into his career to see what golden nuggets we can uncover. And the film we'll be focusing and shining a spotlight on will be the 1997 Al Pacino and Johnny Depp vehicle, Donnie Brasco. Ashley Bank has left the building.